Righty, good morning. What's up? What's up? What's up, everyone? Hope you guys are doing well. Today is November the 18th. It's a Tuesday today. Overall markets ended up dropping towards the downside later into the session. So a lot of consolidation yesterday, but ultimately ended up dropping once we got underneath that Thursday's lows. Now you can see we're basically right back at our last week's lows here on the overall market. So really coming into this morning, we're going to see if the overall markets can bounce off our key level support being our last week's lows on both the major indices. We'll kind of talk about this here in a second. Then we'll go, of course, on to some tech names and then go on to a few other names here as well. What's up, everyone? Good morning. Good morning, Victor, B Roots, Vic, Jeff, Willie, Lamit. What's up, Ryan, 50, Deuce. Good morning, everyone. What's up? Detecto. Good morning, Khaled. I am Vate, Hector, Dragon, Cinna. Yeah, what's up, everyone? Good morning. Hope you guys are doing well. Let's hop onto the charts. Let me actually pull up the Forex Factory here first as well. Oops. I guess I can't pull that up. But for the overall markets coming into today, we don't have any red folder news. The main thing that we do have coming to this week, as I mentioned yesterday, was the FOMC minutes. We have some other red folder news later into the week, and of course we have Nvidia earnings. So Nvidia earnings is going to be tomorrow after close. So that's really the big news driver, and really the next major news event that the overall market is waiting for. I'm gonna grab some water here, and then we'll head on to the NQ chart, and then we'll start off on the major indices. Okay, so coming into today, let's kind of briefly talk about the key levels yesterday. Really what we have marked out was our Friday's highs along with our Thursday's lows. Ultimately, broke underneath that Thursday's lows. ES was showing a little bit more weakness compared to the overall markets, and then really straight drop towards the downside later into the session. Now, based off the higher time frames here for the ES, you can see we're in a very key level. You can see touch here last week. We had another touch on Friday, and then we have another touch coming to market open today. So coming into really this session, specifically today here, what we'd like to see is a reaction that we really have off this level, which happens to now be your previous day lows and also your last week's lows here as well, which is your Friday's lows. So coming to market open today here for the overall markets, if we can maintain underneath, now it's going to be this 6660. We can expect some more continuation towards the downside, really next level here on the higher time frames, down in towards your 6580. So this is the key level here for the ES coming into market open. If we ultimately bounce and get back above this level, potentially you can see another bounce play once again. Right, we've already had multiple bounces off this level. If you look on the daily chart, right, higher time frames, we already had a bounce. This was 2 weeks ago. We had a bounce last week here as well. Another touch on Friday. Technically, this daily candle hasn't closed, so we still could form a fairly bullish candle here with a lower wick. So that's just something to keep in mind, specifically on the ES along with the NQ. But if we can have a weak daily candle close, the next level is going to be all the way back down in towards that 60, really that 6600 as I mentioned. So this daily candle close is going to be fairly important coming into market open. Everything that we're going to keep an eye out on today is just going to be your previous day lows, 66, basically your 6650 here on the ES. If you go on to the SPY chart, similar thesis here. You can see nice bounce. This was 2 weeks ago. We had another bounce on Friday. And they can see another touch once again yesterday. So coming into today, key levels that we have marked out is just going to be really this level here, which in this case is your 663. Key levels, if we can get above it, if we pop and hold underneath their previous day lows and your Friday's lows, we can see some more continuation towards the downside. Right, this is going to be your 663. If we show some buyers within the first 5 minutes, then potentially we can see this kind of mean reversion back up and towards your previous day close and back in between it's yesterday's range. So coming into market open today, right, let's keep an eye out on our previous day lows along with our Friday's lows here as well. If you do want to see shorts, right? Pop and fade underneath your previous day lows. Also, another possible scenario kind of pops up all the way in towards your previous day close, and then you could be looking for the reclaim or break back underneath later into the session. So that's what we have for the ES and SPY coming into today. Let's go on to the NQ chart, since the NQ chart is a tad bit more bullish, but not by a lot. Key levels on the NQ coming into today, you can see this one has multiple touches. Similar thing off this 24, really 700 key level. You can see touch, another touch back here. Previous day lows we actually have right here. You can see we're breaking underneath currently in the pre-market. So for the Qs coming into today, basically the exact same thesis along with the SPY. What we're going to have marked out here is your Friday's lows, and we also have your previous day lows here marked out as well. You can see so far some buyers stepping in here currently in the pre-market, trying to defend this level. So coming into today here for the for the NQ, if we can bounce, similar thing, you can see some more buyers trying to step up. We can see a potential kind of mean reversion back up in towards its previous day close and potentially its Thursday's lows. If we ultimately break underneath, then we're going to see some more continuation lower underneath your Friday's lows for a move all the way back down in towards that 24,200 here on the higher time frame. Sorry, that 24,200 here on the higher time frame. So that's what we have for the NQ coming into today. So the exact same thing applies on the NQ along with the ES. If you go into the QQQ chart, you can see touch here, another touch right here offers 600 key psych level, break underneath. We can see continuation lower down and towards your 592. If we ultimately bounce off this level, right, I think longs, similar thing, are going to be a little bit more difficult, right? Longs have been fairly difficult the past really few weeks now. We've had some nice kind of V-shaped recoveries, kind of right off market open. But overall, right, higher time frames, right, has been bearish. You can see most of these pops have been shorted, and we have been just continuing lower. So for the Qs coming into today, once again, key level that we're going to have marked out is our 600 key psych. If we bounce, potentially we can see this nice kind of push back up into towards your previous day close, which is your 604. If you do want to see downside, right, there's really two scenarios in this case, actually three. Number one, consolidation, right, underneath your previous day lows, continuation towards the downside, right, underneath really the 600 key psych. Another possible scenario here as well is going to be the pop and fade off of your previous day close, or if price came all the way back up in towards your Thursday's lows of last week, it still could be bearish and you could be looking for a fade off this level. So there's really actually three scenarios here for the Qs for some downside today here in the overall markets. Keep an eye out on your previous day lows. And the best short, in my opinion, will come basically underneath our last week's lows. So that's going to be the key level coming into today. And of course, we're going to mark out other key levels here as well. Really for longs, they're just bounces, right? They're not going to have too much continuation. It's going to be something similar to kind of like yesterday, right? You had this nice bounce off your 607, but it was not able to break above your 613, right? If you try and play a bounce today, right, similar thing, right? You never know how much it could bounce. It could bounce up in towards your previous day close. You can see a nice rally up in towards your Thursday's lows, but they're just scalp trades and you want to be taking profits a little bit more quicker. Longs, in my opinion, are now just going to be the best above our 613, right? If you look at this on the hourly chart, you can see lower highs are being built. Really, the next break of structure here now is going to be this 613. So for longs, unless you're looking for kind of bounce off key levels of support, I'll be a little bit cautious just because the higher time frame won't be bullish now until we really break kind of back above the 613, which is fairly far away. So we'll keep an eye out on your 600, and then we'll keep an eye out on this 607 coming into market open. As for all the other semiconductors, you can see kind of following along, right? A lot of pops being shorted on the semis, right? SMH, IWM dropping here as well. One of the big factors that are pushing the market lower here is Bitcoin, right? We haven't talked about this chart in a minute, but you can see kind of pop, nice retest right off our key level of support that ended up turning into resistance. And then we end up having a really solid push, really the last week and a half towards the downside here on Bitcoin. So really a lot of these assets are falling towards the downside here now. And specifically, we're going to talk about a couple of these tech names here in a second. Okay. If you guys do have any charts or any tickers you'd like me to go over here now, I'm going to go over some of the tech names and some of the Mag 7 names, and then I'll go into some other names. But if you guys do have any charts or tickers, you guys can drop in the chat. If you guys are enjoying this so far, I appreciate if you guys drop a like. If you guys haven't joined the daily watch list, that of course is in the description below as well. Yeah, what's up everyone? Hope you guys are doing well. Let's go on to Tesla. So first things first here on Tesla, the key levels that we have marked out yesterday was our 412. So 412, and we also had another higher time frame key level, which is actually this 424 here. So Tesla, at least on, let's go into the 4-hour time frame, right? We kind of had this level marked out, which is our 412. Ultimately, it actually dug a little bit deeper, all the way back up and towards your 425, and now you can see kind of rejecting off this general level. If you go back onto lower time frames, kind of right off the bat, no bearish price action. I was interested in Tesla really underneath your last Thursday's lows. Buyers kind of stepped in right off the bat and pushed all the way back up and towards this 424. So now coming into really today here on Tesla, key level, Friday's highs, and we also mark out our Thursday's lows here as well. So coming into really today here for Tesla, if you want to see some downside, a couple scenarios, pop and fade off your 412, which would be, in my opinion, probably the better opportunity, or you'd be waiting for primarily now the break underneath your Thursday's lows and also your previous day lows for continuation towards the downside. So Tesla, there's two scenarios if you want to look for continuation lower, higher time frame break and retest. Higher time frame break and retest here as well. If you want to see some lower movements off the 412 or underneath now, it's going to be this 398. So those are the key levels that we have marked out on Tesla. Now for long positions, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. Potential break above. I personally don't like this long as much above your 412, but of course that is in play. You end up having that nice retest yesterday off that 412, so reclaim back above, that's a possible opportunity. And then of course, the best longs are going to be above your previous day highs, which in this case is fairly far away. I don't expect this to set up. So for Tesla, right, higher time frame, kind of break and retest, rejecting off this level with a strong candle close. Until we can really break above this 424, I'll be a little bit more cautious on longs, and you're just going to really be looking for right intraday setups instead of looking for continuation. So that's what we have for Tesla coming to today. Just mark out at 412 along with that 398. Let's go on to Nvidia. So Nvidia right here also has earnings tomorrow. So far, kind of dropping towards the downside. Lower highs are being built, but nothing really too much to talk about on this one, just because it does have earnings tomorrow. So, right, be a little bit more hands off on Nvidia and just wait for after earnings. So coming into today, I mean, really not too much to talk about. Key levels that we have marked out is the Friday's highs, 191. So far, you can see we had an inside bar day yesterday. Fairly tight range on Monday, and now you can see we're kind of just right back into this general area, 184. So with this inside bar day, with earnings coming up here as well, just be a little bit more hands off on Nvidia coming into really today. Right, tomorrow is going to be big. I don't expect too many big moves on Nvidia pre-earnings. So that's what we have for this ticker. As for AMD, key levels for AMD coming into today that we're going to have marked out is going to be this 248 along with this 236. So as you can see, yesterday kind of rejected right off the key level we talked about, and nice kind of push right back down in towards that 236 low of the range. So exact kind of rejection right off that 248 we talked about yesterday, and now we're pushing right back towards the downside, 236. So coming into today here, we're closer to the low of the range. I wouldn't be surprised if we kind of bounce off the low of the range and come right back down. Sorry, come right back up in towards this 242. So that's what we have for AMD. Potential bounce play off that 236 if you want to see some more downside. Really underneath this 236, AMD is one of the stronger tickers, along with the semis with Nvidia coming up with earnings. I don't expect it too big of a move here on AMD either. So just be a little bit more patient. It's most likely going to have that bounce play off that 236. As for Apple, key levels that we have marked out, 270. So nice kind of previous day low retest yesterday. Ultimately didn't really do too much, kind of dropped right off the bat, came back towards your previous day lows, and then just kind of held underneath that general level. So for Apple, now we're just kind of at the low of the range. So if we were to mark out the low of the range towards the top of the range, you can see right low, gravitate towards the top of the range, and now we're back at the low. So if we want to see some more downside, really now it's going to be underneath this 266. Right, with it being at the low of the range, it very much well can bounce and just come right back up and towards the middle of the range, which is your 271, which is more likely to happen. So for Apple, not really a higher time frame thesis here, just bouncing off the low of the range. As for Amazon here on the higher time frames has been showing a bit more weakness ever since we broke underneath key levels, which is this 238 along with your 242. Amazon underneath key levels here as well, which is your full gap fill. So for to mark this out, key levels that we have marked out now on Amazon is at 232 and now this full gap fill. So you can see now price actually gravitated down in towards our full gap fill here in the pre-market. So coming into today, key level that we're going to have marked out is really just our previous day lows along with this full gap fill here. If we want to see some more downside, underneath that 229 for continuation lower. If we see the reclaim, right, we can see it push back up towards your 232. So that's what we have for Amazon coming into market open. As for Google, this one ended up having a really solid push right off the bat, right? We have a bullish news catalyst. So really the overall market's dropping here. Google's like one of the only tickers that is really holding up, but you can see kind of gravitated towards our all-time highs and a little bit of rejection here. If we're looking at this on the hourly chart, you can see multiple touches just really off this 292. So far, you can see buyers are stepping in off this 284. What we like to see now for some upside, maintain above your 284 for continuation, or right now above your 292 for this push up in towards your 300 key psych. So that's what we're going to have, right? Basically, your earnings high on Google is going to be one of the targets to be looking for. If you want to see some downside, right, downside's off the table here on Google. Higher time frame bullish, right, drop. This one's holding up compared to the overall markets. This is not something you really want to short. All right, let's go into a few other tickers here for Microsoft. So far, still somewhat staying heavy underneath our key levels, which is our earnings low. So never really showing bullish price action, right? Key levels holding underneath your earnings lows. Now we're just consolidating this general area. If we want to see some more downside now, we'd like to see number one break underneath this 500 key psych. So for Microsoft, we have a couple key levels here, 500 key psych, which is the level we like to see break underneath for continuation. Also, you can see we're down a decent amount here in the pre-market. This is your previous day lows. So for Microsoft, as I mentioned, we have a pretty big gap coming to market open. If you do want to see some downside, really immediate rejection underneath that 500 for a push down in towards, now it's going to be that 497 along with your 495. If you want to see a bounce play now on Microsoft, it's most likely going to occur all the way down here at this 495. As for Meta, so this is the one that I mentioned has been showing a lot of relative weakness compared to the overall markets. Now you can see once it finally broke underneath our key level, which was that daily gap, which is also your Thursday's lows of last week. You can see touch here, broke underneath. Now you can see nice continuation, another retest in the after hours. And now we're dropping towards the downside here as well. So for Meta coming to market open, Key levels that we have marked out, 596. As long as you can maintain above 596, maintain below 596, you can see some more downside here on Meta. So key level 596 coming to market open. And then now for Netflix, after it's split, I'm not as bullish on it, right? I was bullish kind of pre-split, but overall market's dropping. Now it's not showing as much relative weakness after the split here as well. Be a little bit more cautious on Netflix. If we can break underneath this 109, there's actually a decent amount of room towards the downside. So higher time frame level of support, which is your 109. If we break underneath it, we can see a bigger push towards the downside. So that's what we have for Netflix coming to market open. And really that's all the Mag 7 names that we have. So coming into today, really, as I mentioned, it's just going to be based off the SPY and Qs. SPY and Qs previous day lows along with our last week's lows is going to be key. Exact same thing here with SPY. SPY's a little bit weaker. So SPY's kind of leading the market towards the downside. And then if we're looking at any of the tech names, we'll continue to focus here on Tesla just because it's nice and volatile, right? Higher time frame kind of rejected off of your key level of resistance. So we'll keep an eye on a potential kind of pop and fade here for Tesla. Nvidia and AMD, for me, somewhat off the table just because Nvidia has earnings tomorrow. Unless AMD wants to, right, have a pretty big push lower, stay heavy, then I'm going to be a little bit more hands off. If it bounces, then for me, AMD is off the table. But if we can show a little bit of weakness, potentially we will be interested for continuation lower. And then for Apple, similar thing, probably hands off unless we can break underneath. Now it's going to be at least this range low. And then for Amazon, we can keep an eye on this one. As for Google, we'll still keep an eye if the market does want to potentially head higher. And then we'll keep an eye out on Meta and Amazon if the market does want to drop lower. So these are the names that we have towards the downside that are showing a little bit of relative weakness compared to the overall market. And then now I will go on to a few other names here as well. All right. If you guys do have any tickers or any charts you'd like me to go over, I'll go over them some now for the next kind of 5 to 10 minutes. And then I'm going to get ready for market open. Yeah, if you guys do have any charts or any tickers, I'll go over some now here. If you guys are enjoying this stream, of course, I'd appreciate if you guys drop a like. If you guys haven't joined the daily watch list, that one's in the description below. All right, let's go into Palantir first. So for Palantir here, as I mentioned yesterday, one of my two main watches were Tesla and potential Palantir just based off the higher time frames. Ultimately, both of those never actually set up. But for Palantir, this one's still bearish here on the higher time frames. You can see key level we have marked out 170. Try breaking underneath it. Actually, we did. And now you can see we're trying to hold underneath this 170. So for Palantir coming to market open today, key levels that we're going to have marked out is really going to be this 170. Right, 170 along with their previous day lows. Right, so there's two scenarios here, either the potential pop and fade off your previous day lows or now pop up in towards your 170 for this continuation lower. So we'll keep an eye on Palantir for this push down in towards this 165 here, coming to market open. Let me go on gold, since some people are asking. So gold is still higher time frame bullish in my opinion. So you can see nice push up. Kind of talked about this not too long ago. When's the last time I had this marked out? But gold, nice kind of bounce off our key level support, reclaim back above key levels. And now we're just going to consolidate here after having this really solid push higher. So for gold, now we'd like to see, right, higher lows be built. Right, you kind of can mark out this kind of trend line here as well. For gold, at least on the daily chart, we're just going to consolidate and then eventually have that next leg higher. If you're looking at this on the 4-hour time frame, really not too much now. We're just coming back into the area that we broke out from, which is essentially this area of resistance. And now you like to see it kind of turn into support for a potential move back towards the upside. If you want to see a move higher, reclaim. If you want to see a rejection, right, break underneath, hold underneath for this continuation lower. All right. So for names like this, as you can see, something like Hims, where the market is only down about a couple percent off of our all-time highs, a lot of these high beta names have been dropping. So something like Hims, levels that we have marked out, is now you can see our range low. You can see touch here, and now we're breaking underneath. So a lot of these high beta names are now falling. You can see a lot of consolidation, now breaking underneath. And now this one's just going to gravitate lower, right? We have this kind of earnings gap here. Not really too much to talk about. Key levels that we have all the way back down in towards our earnings low. So this one's just going to continue lower. So unless you're long-term invested or whatnot, there's not really too much to talk about, right? Once we got underneath that earnings low, we end up having, right, more continuation towards the downside. Let's see. Let's go into a couple other names here as well. What broker would I recommend? There's a bunch of brokers. As long as they're regulated, it also depends where you're from as well. But yeah, there's a bunch of definitely a different type of brokers. If you're talking about TradingView, I personally don't connect my broker to TradingView, but if you're trading options, right, Moomoo, Interactive Brokers, I guess this is Canadian, but there's a bunch of different other brokers as well. If you're trading futures, there's a lot of good futures brokers as well, which is like AMP and other names. Let's go into Hood. Can someone be profitable purely based off logic and reason, no strategy at all? Yeah, someone, as long as you have solid risk management, right? If you have a proven edge in the markets and you have solid risk management, you can be profitable. Well, technically, logic and reason, I wouldn't say it's a strategy in itself, but right, just context, which is very important. And if you combine that with your strategy, that's going to be even better, right? You still need an entry model. You still need, right, proper risk management, how to manage a position. So technically, you're going to need a strategy to get into a stock, right? You can't just buy randomly. But as for Hood, this one's dropping here as well. So showing a little bit of weakness now underneath key levels of support, which is this 124. So now based off the higher time frames here for Hood, showing a little bit more weakness. Hood is actually a nice name. Once it got back underneath that Thursday's key pivot point, or sorry, we had a couple key levels here. We had our 123. We could have also marked out that Thursday's lows here as well. Once we got underneath that Thursday's lows, this one really stayed heavy all day. Nice push down in towards that 113. So now for Hood moving forward, 113 is going to be key. If you want to see some more downside, underneath your 113 for a push lower. If you want to see a potential mini bounce, right, keep an eye out on your 113 for a mini bounce. As for SoFi, yeah, SoFi dropping along with a bunch of other tickers here as well, kind of rejected off our all-time highs. Now it's just going to come back down in towards key levels of support, which is really this 26 here on the higher time frame. So really not too much to talk about. If you go into the 4-hour time frame, we're just now inside of this range here on SoFi. Let's see. MSTR. So MSTR has been showing a lot of weakness, right? Higher time frames, really this year now, really ever since August, this one's kind of just been dropping towards the downside. Bitcoin dropping now as well. So this one's unraveling and pushing lower, really breaking underneath key levels of support, which happened to be 240. And now we're about to come all the way back down really into the area that we broke out from, which is kind of this 180, right? You can kind of draw this general area, which is of course is pretty big, but coming back down all the way towards this 180 here. So for MSTR, this one has been showing tons of weakness here with Bitcoin dropping now as well. Now you're just going to mark out old pivot highs. All right, previous levels of support turn into resistance. Next key levels that we can mark out, we can just mark out our Friday's lows here as well, which is going to be this 196. If you want to see continuation lower, right, either pop and fade off your 207 or underneath your 196 for continuation lower. Okay, I'm going to go on to my game plan today, and then I'm going to get ready for market open here. Let's see. I use IBKR, but I see the price reset sooner than the actual price movements on TradingView. Is that something you see? Use IBKR, but I see the option price react sooner than the actual price movement on TradingView. Yeah, that just depends if you have real-time data. Usually it should be fairly similar. If it's not, it's going to be off by maybe a tick or two. But sometimes if you look at the options premium compared to the TradingView chart, there's like maybe not a half, there's like a tick difference. So it might be maybe a couple milliseconds off, but it's fairly similar. If it's longer than that, then it's a data providing issue. Brokers for Forex. I personally don't trade Forex as long as they're regulated. I know there's a lot of unregulated brokers, so I'd just be a little bit more cautious. So coming into market open here, as I mentioned, the levels are fairly clear today, right? For the Qs and SPY. If we want to see some downside, we're either looking for three scenarios, as I mentioned. Break underneath, number one scenario. Number two scenario, pop and fade off your previous day close. Or if price came all the way back up and towards your Thursday's lows, you can be looking for the shorts off your 607. So three scenarios for Qs towards the downside. If you're looking for longs, there's really only one scenario, which would just be the reversal right off the bat, right off the 600 key psych. If you're looking at the SPY, similar thing. If you're looking for a bounce, right, it'll be right off the bat for a push higher. If you want to see some shorts, either the break underneath, right, potential previous day close short for a push lower. For SPY now, I think this is too far of a short in my opinion off your Thursday's lows, right? The NQ is a little bit less bullish, so this would be a much easier short on the Qs, whereas the SPY, it's a pretty big kind of jump to short off of if it's going to come all the way back up and towards your 671. So for the SPY, these are the two levels. Qs, I had three levels marked out. Main watch is coming to market open. Tesla, I'm open to playing both sides. So I am leaning a little bit more towards the downside just based off the higher time frames, but it's like a 60-40, right? I'm leaning or 60-40 or 70-30. I'd much rather kind of look for pop and fades towards the downside. But if the overall market does want to potentially reverse, then we can be looking for longs as well. But the past kind of couple of weeks, I've been more bearish towards the downside. So coming to market open, I would say I have like a 70% stance compared to like a 30 on the upside. So I'd much rather look for pop and fades instead of looking for these mean reversions in the overall market. So that's what I have. I'm still open to playing both sides, but as I mentioned, leaning a little bit more lower. For Tesla, key level is going to be this 412 potential pop and fade. Now it's really going to be kind of underneath this previous day close potentially, or underneath your Thursday's lows. Those are the key levels. For longs, above your 412 is in play, or really now it's going to be above that 424. Nvidia and AMD, as I mentioned, basically off the table. AMD is actually not off the table. Nvidia is off the table for sure, but at least for AMD, potential right break underneath for continuation lower, or right, since a lot of buyers have stepped in here, I wouldn't be surprised if we have that nice bounce once again off this 236. As for Apple consolidation, Amazon has been showing a little bit more weakness, so we can keep an eye out on Amazon underneath our previous day lows, along with that full gap fill. 229 is going to be key. Google's the only name that's fairly bullish here compared to the overall market. So if the market bounces, we can keep an eye out on Google. And then for everything else, Meta, keep an eye on this one for downside, and then even potential Palantir here as well. But yeah, that is going to be it for me today. That's my game plan coming to market open. As I mentioned, keep an eye out on your previous day lows. That's going to be key here for really everything coming into market open. We are at a very key level of support. So very key inflection point coming to market open. We'll see if we do get that bounce, or if we are going to head lower down now all the way towards your 592. So that is going to be it for me coming into today. Hopefully you guys did enjoy that. If you did, appreciate if you guys drop a like and sub. If you guys haven't joined the watch list for the daily watch list, that of course is in the description below. And then I will see you guys all tomorrow. All right, take care everyone. Have a great rest of the day. Peace.